What is up, everybody? Well, I wanted to get you guys some quarter mile results after the tune, but good old Ma Nature decided to thwart those plans. Seems that down here on the Third Coast, we're just getting flooded about every other day, so being able to go out and get you guys any data that's actually worth the shit has been basically impossible. But it got me to thinking a little bit as far as what my plans are going to be moving forward for this car. Am I going to do any more modifications to it? Am I looking to possibly get some more performance out of it in any other way? And you know, I think the car with the tune has gotten to the point now where anything else that I do to the car is just going to take away from the overall performance slash comfort, value, whatever you want to call it. I've toyed around with the idea of going with a catless mid-pipe, but the cars that I've heard with those catless mid-pipes, it's not so much that they sound better, they just sound loud. And it's not a good loud, it's kind of a crappy, sort of a raspy, it doesn't sound that great. It sounds like an LS platform with an X-pipe and chambered mufflers. So, not really looking for that for this car, as far as headers or high flow cats or anything like that. In talking to some folks that are a lot more knowledgeable than I am about these cars, it seems like going with long tubes or even going with the catless mid-pipe, you're just not going to net enough of a power gain to be worth the money. And I mentioned this in another video, but if you start to add up everything that you're doing in one of these cars, you've got to have some kind of return on it. If I were going after every last tenth or hundredth of a second that I could with this car, yeah, I would probably go that route. That kind of walks in lockstep with me hand porting the intake on this thing. You know, I just don't see there being enough of a value in it, especially to cover the cost of those modifications. And as I was thinking about that, you know, really what direction I want to take the car, about the only other modification that I'm going to make to the car, and I'm not really going to call this a modification, but I am going to go with a drag radial style tire. It will probably have the drag radials on before it goes to the track for its next round of testing and data acquisition. The main reason for that is just at this point, with a little bit extra power and no torque management in the transmission, traction in second gear is more or less a joke. I was able to round off a 4.2 second 0 to 60, but to get the car to repeat that was pretty difficult. And again, it's all in the launch technique, but once the thing hits second gear, you can't stay in the throttle like you used to. Now you stay in the throttle and it just lights the tires up. So, which is fun, don't get me wrong, I'm thoroughly enjoying that part of it, but to really take advantage of the extra power and the modifications that the car has now, it really does need a drag radial. And listen, I feel for you guys with the scat packs. You guys have 245s from the factory. At least I've got the 275 all seasons. I know it's not much of a difference between the two and just in terms of traction, but guys, man, I feel bad for you. So yeah, if you're doing any modifications to your Challengers, whether they're scat packs or the SRT, yeah, you're probably going to want to go with the drag radial. And I don't know how the Hellcat guys get away with it. But again, you know, after thinking about that, I got to thinking, well, really, how much faster does this thing need to go? I mean, if I were building a race car, I would have started off with something that was already going to lend itself well to being a race car. I wouldn't start off with, you know, 4,300 pounds worth of this. You know, there's a ton of other options that are out there, too many to list, really. So again, it kind of got me to thinking, you know, how fast is fast enough, and what is a comfortable compromise between performance and reliability? To me, I feel like as long as I'm not cracking open the engine any further than, you know, some breathing mods, leaving it as stock as possible, and basically optimizing stock parts, that's about as far as I want to take any of the modern cars. Now, granted, there is an argument for forced induction, but look, the car is already making well into the 500 horsepower range to the crank as it sits. I don't know that spending $5,000 or $7,000 on a supercharger kit to gain another 100 horsepower or 115, 120 horsepower would really add to a driving experience with this car. If anything, it might take away. And the mission statement of this particular car, the whole reason why I bought it, was not to have a race car. It's to have something that I can take on road trips, that I can take on a drag strip or even a road course if I were to choose to, which would be a riot in something this size. But you know, something that I can have fun with in any situation and in all conditions. And my thoughts are, if I want to take something even further than what this thing is going to basically end up at, which is basically the car now with a tire, then I would go ahead and probably find another project platform to go with, and it probably would be LS based, mainly just in terms of cost. You got to remember, if this thing lets go, it's not like I can just go to the nearest junkyard and yank out another 392. Doesn't quite work like that. These things are about, I don't know, 8 or 9 times more expensive than working with an LS. So there's that deficit to deal with as well. But getting back to the question though, you know, what is fast? And how do you blend speed with reliability? What have you guys done with your platforms, or, you know, not necessarily a Challenger or a Charger, but with anything that you've had? You know, where did you find that medium? I've often found that, you know, once you get a car into the mid to low 12s or just into the high 11s, there's this breakover point, and that breakover point is typically reliability or streetability / drivability, whatever you want to call it. And that's a place where I don't want to be. I don't want to be teetering on that, because, you know, that line is so ambiguous that, you know, what one person's acceptability is somebody's "I'm fed up with it" mark, you know. So I think the mission statement for the car at this point, and the goals for this car modifications are, I am probably not going to do any exhaust modifications to it. I don't see any real benefit to it. Although an inexpensive mod, I think you can get a catless pipe for these cars, for the Chargers and the Challengers, for, I don't know, somewhere around $300-400, and they're real simple to install. I mean, you're removing a part and installing a part, clear access to everything. But again, I don't really know that I want to live with, you know, just the sound of it. It doesn't really appeal to me too much. In terms of power adders, nope, not going to happen. I've already been down that path a few times, and it doesn't really matter how well engineered the kits are. There's always some compromises to be had, and to be frank with you, to me, the car's too nice as it sits to complicate it any further by throwing a supercharger on it and not really getting much more out of the car other than maybe a time slip. I just don't feel like it would be any more fun to drive. The driving experience in total wouldn't really be improved, you know, with the addition of an extra 100 horsepower. And really, to be perfectly transparent, if I wanted more power, I would probably just get rid of the car and get a Hellcat, and leave the Hellcat alone, leave it stock, and just enjoy that for what it is. But when I bought this car, I actually bought it with the understanding that I wanted a naturally aspirated car to begin with. I've had supercharged cars, and the problem with the supercharged platform is they're just a pulley and a tune away from making more power, right? I mean, it's pretty intoxicating to know that you can have, instead of just 707 in the case of the Hellcat, you can round that up to about 850 pretty quickly, but potentially at the expense of the supercharger eating itself, which quite a few of the Hellcat guys have discovered here as they've been modifying their cars. And again, I wanted something that was less complex. For what I paid for this thing, would have made for a tidy down payment on a Hellcat, and I still decided to go naturally aspirated, so it is going to stay that way. And yes, I do mean naturally aspirated in terms of it is not going to get nitrous. And yeah, there was a time where I would throw nitrous on anything. I mean, you're talking to or listening to a guy that had actually put a cheater kit on a riding lawnmower just because sometimes the grass got a little bit thick. Listen, it's to me that there is no more performance to be gained with the car other than just waiting for better atmospheric conditions. The car is running the car is running a 1259 and real consistent 1260s in DAs that were averaging between 2,000 and 2,500 feet on a stock all-season tire. I think with the tire, with the tune, give it some good weather, and I could probably see it getting down into the 12.2, 12.1s. You know, if I run it light, in other words, pull the speaker box, run it pretty low on gas, remove any unnecessary weight, I could probably get the thing down into the 11s plenty quick. And it's still, and to that point, that number falls in line with that breakover point. You know, mid to low 12s, maybe get into the high 11s. Nice and reliable. I can drive this thing from one coast to the next without any hesitation whatsoever, and still take it to the track, still run it back and forth to the office if I wanted to, and, you know, pretty much let anybody drive it and not have to worry about them breaking it, blowing it up, or getting themselves or somebody else killed in the process. So anyway, those are my ideas with my car moving forward. Other than a tire, probably going to leave it alone at this point and just enjoy it. I'm looking forward to getting you guys some track videos as soon as the fucking weather will allow for it. And aside from that, post up what you've got. That's about it for me. It's a wrap. Adios.